Hello everyone and welcome to Lost in the Reel. Today I'm going to be ranking all of the films from one of my personal favorite directors of all time, James Wan. From Saw all the way to this weekend's Malignant, I will be ranking his films from the worst to the best. So, let's do this. Wan burst out onto the scene with the hit film Saw, and although he followed those up with 2 box office disappointments, he came back with a vengeance, and to this date has created 3 franchises and contributed to 2 existing ones. He is one of the best directors of horror working today, and because he dropped his first original film since The Conjuring all the way back in 2013, Malignant, I thought I would rank his 10 theatrical films. I'd like to start this off by saying that besides my number 10, I like all of James Wan's films to a certain degree. So let's start this off with my number 10, and that is Insidious Chapter 2. While I quite enjoyed the original Insidious, James Wan's reluctance to do sequels shows in every frame of this movie. While there are some scary bits, for the most part I kind of sat there and stared at this movie blankly without feeling at all frightened. Chapter 2 feels lazy and repetitive, like Wan was just going through the motions. Rose Byrne and Patrick Wilson, 2 performers that I love, also seem to be sleepwalking here. So even though I love Wan, for me the Insidious franchise is one that I wish had just stuck to its solo outing. My number 9 pick is Death Sentence, a gritty revenge flick starring Kevin Bacon that absolutely bombed at the box office. Based upon a book by Brian Garfield, this film is heavily inspired by the Charles Bronson Death Wish films that came before it. This is Wan's worst rated directorial effort at a 20% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I think that this is an unfair score. Kevin Bacon gives this film his all, completely going against type, turning from a mild-mannered executive into a cold-blooded killer. This is a story that sticks to the formula to a T, and that's where it falters, but the brutal action and surprising heart will keep you invested. I definitely think that this one deserves a reassessment. My number 8 pick is Dead Silence, which stands at a 21% on Rotten Tomatoes and was another huge box office disappointment for Wan. This film, following True Blood's Ryan Kwanten as he tries to solve his wife's murder after a mysterious ventriloquist dummy arrives at his doorstep, is the definition of ridiculous. But James Wan has created a deliciously entertaining little fright fest full of fun jump scares and follows a very creative premise. It's an ode to horror of yesteryear, and while it is full of incredulous moments and hard to take seriously, Dead Silence is a great midnight movie. My number 7 choice in Wan's filmography is Aquaman. And although coming in at a lower spot on this list, this is easily one of my favorite films from the DCEU. Jason Momoa was such inspired casting for Arthur Curry. What acting chops he lacks, he more than makes up for them with his charisma. Wan proved once again that he can handle action just as much as he can with horror, especially with the jaw-dropping underwater scenes that were unlike anything that we had seen before. I do think Aquaman is a very silly movie, and much of the supporting cast like Patrick Wilson, Nicole Kidman, Yahya Abdul-Mateen, and Willem Dafoe are supremely underutilized. This is still a sweeping superhero epic, and I am certainly looking forward to the sequel. My number 6 pick is going to be The Conjuring 2. This is a movie that I really like, but also the repetitiveness of the scares come into question. Frances O'Connor is a force to be reckoned with, and I was so pleased to have her presence here, along with Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, of course, but something about The Conjuring 2 feels a little stale, like been there, seen that. When I think of the Conjuring series, my mind always goes to the first one, while this one just seems to be a bit of a retread. I still stand by this though. I do wish Wan came back for the third film to finish off this trilogy, because the less said about The Devil Made Me Do It, the better. My number 5 is a film that I still love, but it has lost a bit of its luster as time has gone on, and that is Insidious. When I first saw this movie in theaters, I thought it was the scariest thing that I had ever seen. Once again, we have a James Wan mainstay in Patrick Wilson, as well as the incredible Rose Byrne, and they really add some levity to this film. Leigh Whannell also probably gives his best performance to date as Ghost Hunter Specs, and he really adds a great deal of comedic relief to Insidious that it needed. Some of the jump scares in this movie I will surely never forget, but unfortunately these moments haven't aged so well since it was released in 2010. The final act has some major issues, and the PG-13 rating really holds Wan back, but I still think Insidious is an original funhouse of horrors that deserves to be seen. My number 4 choice comes from James Wan taking over one of my favorite franchises of all time in Furious 7. Say what you want about this series, but it is one of the most successful film franchises ever. And Wan was put through the tumultuous and unexpected task of having to make a film that not only propelled the action even more, but also gave honor to the legacy of the late Paul Walker. And in my opinion, he succeeded. He created the most cohesive, adrenaline rush, and emotional gut punch of a Fast and Furious film, and I don't think the series will ever hit these heights again. My number 3 pick is a movie that was just released on HBO Max and in theaters this last Friday. And I truly believe that Malignant is one of the most ballsy original horror films to come out in ages. Is it perfect? Is the acting great? Absolutely not. The first act of this film is all camp, and there was a moment where I thought that this would probably be my least favorite James Wan film. Also, the lighting in this movie kills me. I know Wan is trying to create atmosphere, but Malignant was so dark that it was hard to see anything that was going on at times. But as this movie progresses, it gets under your skin and gives us a bold new vision of terror. It goes to places that I could have never expected. Wan takes the giallo films of decades past, gives them an homage, and then also a modern day tune-up. Malignant is the definition of a director having the time of his life, directing balls to the wall horror. My number 2 is one of the most classic films from this last decade that spawned not just a franchise, but a horror universe. And that movie is, of course, The Conjuring. I went back and forth on whether to put Malignant in this spot or not, but the lasting impact of this film is what ultimately made me decide that this movie deserves the silver trophy. Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga's chemistry in these movies is the driving force of what gives them so much power. But Wan's direction has never been more refined and focused than in his original Conjuring. Still to this day, this movie sends shivers up my spine and gives me goosebumps. It is the perfect haunted house film, and many filmmakers for years to come will try to replicate what was done here, and I'm sorry, but it's never gonna happen. And of course, that means that my number 1 James Wan film is Saw, the film that inexplicably started the torture porn genre. The thing is, though, is that I feel like this movie is so much more than that. And even though the other films did exploit the gruesome nature of this story, even though I still love them, Saw is still a terrifying movie, still to this day. Its imagery sticks in your head long after it's over. I will never forget in junior high when I relayed all of the events of the film to kids who weren't able to watch it. The shock on their faces as I told this story, I will never forget. This is also a fascinating whodunit that keeps you guessing all the way until its shocking ending. Haters can keep on hating, but Saw is one of the best horror films of all time. Thank you so much for watching Lost in the Reel. We will see you soon.